Yeah, we are live.
Yeah, we are live.
All right.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Um, Again, Karen, thank you so much. I know how busy you are in this Saturday and taking some time and coming and talking to us. It's really a pleasure and honor for us, and we want to thank you for that. I know it's such a diverse audience, different. I can see them, like some of them are very technical, some of them are like trying to get an idea on the concepts. And so it's a mix of audience. The reason Karen is here, actually, I worked with Karen in many projects. So my interactions, Karen, sees as strategist, correct? So that means how do you take an idea and sell those ideas, correct? Let's assume out of this 180 people, correct, few of them have an idea of forming a startup company or doing something. So how you form a strategy? What is the winning team you should have, correct? Keep in mind, I was part of the Howard Labs team, correct? So I have seen people just for PowerPoint getting millions of dollars. Why? So their ideas are great. Their concepts are very powerful. The way they spoke and the way they present made them to get quickly 2 million, 3 million, just like that, correct? But of course, it all matters, correct? What time we do, how we do it matters, correct? It's not that everyone's going to get 2 million, 3 million, just like that. So if you are in the journey of finding a venture or building a business or do some entrepreneurial activity, where do you start? What strategy you need to have in place? What the winning team you should have? So that was a question for myself. And I asked Karen, she helped me. So I thought it would be very valuable for you all to listen. And that's why Karen is here. Without any further delay, let's bring Karen here. Thank you, Karen. Back to you.
Thank you, Jyoti. I appreciate it. I appreciate the kind invitation and all the organization that has gone into reaching such a wide audience. I'm just thrilled and honored to be asked to be here. So I'm going to share my screen so we can take a look at the business of AI. That's basically what I'm going to be talking about. And I realize that I have the distinction of being right before your lunch. And Jyoti was talking about, I think he was talking about sandwich making in his presentation. And so
I love sandwiches.
I know I was getting hungry. So hopefully I can keep your attention. As Jyoti said, our company is very much focused on the business of AI, and it's basically how to form a business around AI. We service and we support many different clients. We're a management consulting firm that's focused on largely how do you design an enterprise? How do you design a company? And it naturally leads to every company for the most part has some kind of technology element to it. So we practice a human-centered design for complex IT transformations in everything from startups to large private industry and government enterprises. We recently helped the state of California launch its Center for Data Insights and Innovation last year. Our purpose, it's unusual. I think whenever I look at company purposes, I think of ours, and usually purpose of a company doesn't have the word hope in it or despair in it. But our purpose is to see executive burdens lessened, and I consider you all executives. If you are looking to start a company, you're an executive, and we like to help you think like an executive. So when you're starting a company, there's the burden of what do I do to start it up, as Jyoti said. There's the burden of how do I improve my company? And so our focus is on executive burdens being lessened, on organizational order being increased. We want the leaders in those companies and their organizations to have more hope, to love their job, to have more success, less despair. And in the end, we're all about meeting human need. So for us, the subject of artificial intelligence and human intelligence is a really important one. So I'm going to be talking to you about basically three things. How do you start up a company in a very lean and agile fashion? I'm going to be talking about Elian's strategic stakeholder engagement framework, because even if you're starting a company or whether you're managing a large one or you're working on an AI project, you're going to need to manage an ecosystem, if you will, of people who are going to fund it, who are going to support you in it, who are going to collaborate with you, such as partners or vendors. And so managing that ecosystem of humans around your business is really important. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how women are suited for these leadership roles in AI, just because of how we're wired. So hopefully that'll keep your interest, and you won't go running to your refrigerator while I'm talking. So what we do in our AI business and strategy consulting, we recommend a proven process of lean startup. You may or may not have heard of this. There are books written on lean startup, and we have really embraced it. It's important because it keeps you nimble and agile. And as you're learning about your customers and what they need and want in your business, you're able to pivot if you need to. And so it's really important to be kind of, I call it light on your feet when you're starting up anything, even if it's not a business, but maybe an AI project. So first things first, principles basically allow you to rapidly progress decisions around your projects. And what we consider first things first are the customer and the lean startup principles. Everything we do is focused on being very customer centric. And, you know, the right few steps need to be taken in what we call the build, measure, learn approach. And I'll share a little bit about that with you. So let me see, there we go. So this is the build, measure, learn loop. And I put this little "you are here" icon to show that, like, if you're starting building a product, a lot of people start by building the product, right? Or if you're building an AI program around something that you're looking to automate, a lot of people want to just start coding, right? And what is important from our perspective are these first three steps before you even get there. So first, you have to identify who your customers are, what are their pain points, the problems, what needs they have, and what solutions do you think they're turning to right now versus what maybe they would turn to if you implemented your project. And you want to get out and talk to customers really early on. You want to talk to them and really find out what they do want or need. And if this is starting a new business, there are focus groups you can form for potential clients. Potential clients love to talk to you, and it's a way of selling them on your idea before you even have to sell them on your idea, because you're asking them to help you. People love to help other people, we found. But talk about what they really do want or need. Then you've got to formulate a value proposition. What product or service am I going to deliver? What pains am I going to alleviate for that target customer group? And what valuable gains am I going to allow, deliver to them? The piece that I didn't write here and should have is uniquely. Your value proposition needs to be, what can you uniquely do? You, your company, your project. And again, I know that, I don't know that all 300 of you are interested in starting companies, but perhaps you're interested in moving into AI or improving your AI skills. And so thinking of your customer perhaps as your internal customer, your company that you're already a part of. And then what you do from that point is you're going to build a minimum viable product, and you're going to test this value proposition. Is it really true? Am I able to deliver it? And I call it delivering your product an inch wide and a mile deep. No, an inch wide, an inch deep and a mile wide. And so you're basically building your product, thin layer of your product, to deliver that value proposition and really test it and see, put the minimum features in there to actually test your hypothesis and see if it's indeed true. You're going to do some rapid experiments, measure the results, and design some tests to conduct around, is this working? Is this working in the way that, I need it to? And see if your hypotheses actually hold true. And of course, use that data to refine your business model. You might need to change your business model if you are starting up a company. We call it pivot or prevail. So in prevailing, you say, yes, my hypothesis was true. My value proposition rings true with these customers. And so I don't need to change my program, my product, or my service. And I'm going to go ahead and prevail and continue to build more and more of the product. I'm going to test, etc. So I advanced by mistake. There we go. So, so basically, if you find that your business model or your product isn't necessarily resonating, or your project isn't producing the results, then you need to pivot. And pivoting says, I got to go back and check with my customers and really see if I'm understanding their pain, or really understanding the solution that I need to build in this program. And basically adjust in the beginning here. You might adjust your value proposition. You might adjust what you're building. You might say that, you know what, they said that pain was the most important one, but I'm finding out it's not as I'm working with them. So this is a real flyby, very fast loop through the Lean Startup build, measure, learn loop. And as I said, there are some books out there that I would recommend. There's a number of good ones that you can get to really learn about this process and execute it, whether, again, you're starting up a project or you're starting up a business. So for us, what is important, as I mentioned, is those first 3 steps of that. The product development, or the artificial elements, if you will, the things that you are automating, are important. But if those human elements are not addressed, then your project is surely going to struggle. And one of the things that I did we have a lot of smart people in our company, and we get them together in learning sessions and collaboration sessions once a quarter. And one of the things I asked them in a recent one was, what is the one thing that's really difficult for you on the projects that you're working on? And keep in mind, I have architects and engineers and data scientists and, all sorts of really smart people that work with our company. And so to ask them, what is the one challenge? I thought I was going to get all sorts of different things that were maybe more of a technical nature. But what I learned from them was that the hardest thing was managing the humans around the project. And so I call them the stakeholders, the people that really care about the success of the project. And that could be customers that are executives, that could also be other parts of an organization that perhaps their project is going to touch. It could be people in the finance area that are managing the budget around the project. It could be HR issues. There's so many things that the humans around a project can, if you're having good interactions with them, then your project has a chance of being more successful. We use a phrase, we say culture is king, because it does. It really rules every project and ensures the success of the project. So let me talk a little bit about human intelligence. So I think it's back in 1956, a gentleman by the name, a computer scientist called John McCarthy, was one of the first people to define the term artificial intelligence. And so I'm like, well, what is human intelligence, right? And so then we can talk about what is artificial. And so these capabilities here on the left, things like logic and reasoning, the ability to learn, emotional intelligence, the ability to plan, being creative, thinking abstractly. These are all things that each of us as mothers work with our children to develop. And there are a lot of things and techniques that we use. There's a lot of books written about how to develop these things in your child. And that basically you think about it in terms of a machine. So a machine is generally considered to use AI if it's able to perform in a way that matches these abilities. And we think of things like logic, and in the case of machine learning, reasoning, the ability to learn, right? The ability to plan, to do problem solving. Can all of these be automated? Should all of these be automated? And so those are some of the things that, Jyoti and I love getting into these conversations when he's delivering his training, and he talks about, where the machines would replace humans, and, where the artificial intelligence comes to play, because I lean toward, we don't want to automate everything. We want to make sure the humans are still in charge. We want to make sure that the human voice is still heard when we're implementing artificial intelligence. So what we like to do is, when we're working on any kind of a project, in order to reach the goals of the project, or for you to reach the goals of your starting up your business, or learning AI in a collaborative environment, working on a project that includes AI. Those goals, if you're working with other people, which generally we are, have to start with a foundation of respect and trust in order to get the best result. Because then you can start to learn true information, real information. People will share information in a climate of respect and trust. And then people will be more creative, they'll be vulnerable, they'll be able to share more of themselves, if you will, in that creative process, if good information is shared and if there is a foundation of respect and trust. So you think about achieving those goals. If we're only focused up here on the goals, oh boy, have you ever worked in a small group before? You work on a project with a small group that you've never worked with before. And a lot of times groups struggle. But the best groups, that those small groups work together, is where they have had some time to develop that respect and trust foundation. And then a small group can really do great things. So we, as I mentioned, are frequently engaging executive stakeholders in our projects. And that can be in government at the legislative level. In a company, it can be at the executive level. Certainly at a project, you're still having to make sure you're operating within that ecosystem. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I asked our consultants, what's the one area that really, can cause you angst on your projects and really present roadblocks for you to, being able to be successful. So what I did was I created this stakeholder engagement framework, and it helps a group, to a diverse stakeholder group that you identify that exists around your project or your new company. And you're thinking about, what do we have in common? What can we all agree on that needs to happen in order to solve some large or complex problem? And this kind of work really requires us to use what I found to be 4 core components of success that are needed to really sustain any complex initiative, even if it's short, or any complex initiative if it's multi-year, which sometimes, starting up companies, yes, it is. So this is the framework. So we basically have 4 elements. I'm going to go through each of these. framework, each of these framework elements and each of the phases a little bit slowly for you. So don't feel like you need to read all these words. So the 4 components of success, which are, down here in this column, it's governance and infrastructure. It's the strategic planning elements. It's what I call community engagement, the community being the people that are around your project or your new business startup. And then there's, of course, evaluation and improvement that needs to happen around any complex initiative. So the governance and infrastructure, it's basically getting that stakeholder group together, identifying who's going to champion it. You're going to need to form what I call cross-sector steering committees to guide it if it's big and complex. And you'll want to figure out and launch work groups. It's essentially building that backbone and cadence for interaction throughout the project that's going to sustain the momentum. These are the people I'm going to need to check in with regularly around my AI project or my new company. The second one is strategic planning, and that's basically holding that one-on-one dialogue about the initiative with each of the stakeholders, trying to understand the context for the initiative, identifying resources, mapping out the vision and the landscape for the plan, creating that common agenda across all the stakeholders, and what I call a blueprint for implementation. We actually have a proprietary process we call KDOI. The word KDOI means flash of insight. And it basically is a way to, in a very short period of time, sketch out a strategic plan. You think about strategic planning efforts, and if you've been around them or involved in them, they're typically many days long. They produce pretty documents and they sit on the shelf. What I'm talking about here is something that's very practical and can be put on one page, one piece of paper that will show and remind everyone in your stakeholder group what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it in sort of rapid iterative steps. The community engagement piece is where you're actually, identifying the stakeholder community, you're determining how ready they are to embrace this new project. You're creating an engagement plan. How am I going to communicate with them? How am I going to engage with them on an ongoing basis? Making sure that leadership has a voice in the initiative or the new thing. And in the case of starting a company, it's definitely your customer focus groups. And identifying if there is what I call community will, the motivation to support the initiative with good change management frameworks. The last one component is around evaluation and improvement. And you want to make sure that you figure out how you're going to measure success. How will we know when we're done? And so developing a set of high-level shared metrics and strategies. Who owns them? How are we going to collect them? And how are we going to report our progress? So each of the phases, in phase 1, you're really assessing the readiness. That's really what you're all about doing. Convening your executive leadership. You're holding dialogue about what it is you're trying to accomplish. You're identifying the available resources, figuring out if you have consensus or motivation, to move forward. The second phase is around initiating the action. So who are the champions? Form that cross-sector, steering committee that will guide your effort. In the case of a startup, it's that customer focus group, but it also consists of your key suppliers, the people you're actually going to need when your business is operating. You're going to map out the vision, the why, the why we're doing the project. You're going to start to do your outreach for, those champions, and then identifying the baseline metrics to identify where are we today and where are we trying to get to. And then phase 3 is where you're organizing for impact. You are actually then creating that common agenda, clear identification of the problem, the goal that you're trying to achieve. You're incorporating everybody's voice around the initiative, and then developing those high-level shared metrics and strategies that you're communicating at the executive level or whoever's overseeing your project or initiative. Phase 4 is where you're beginning the implementation. You've got work groups, and you've chosen who's going to be on my team, who's going to be in my company. You've got a blueprint or a plan, a roadmap for implementation. You're identifying quick wins so that you get buy-in all along the way of your project. You're going to also be engaging the broader, again, I call community in parens. It's not necessarily, I'm not talking about necessarily the community at large, but it's the community that's around your project, and continuing to build the will to support it. And then you're sharing your metrics and how you're doing. And that could be reporting on project status. It could be if you're using an agile method, it could be you're holding demonstration sessions, demos, every 2 weeks to someone you're considering your product owner, and that sort of thing. Phase 5 is where you're really, sustaining that action and that iterative loop, going back to the lean startup, where you're continuing to build out your product, your supporting organization. The work groups are starting to evolve. Your strategy may be refined. You're continuing to work with the organization to make sure you can have their will to continue to support it. Communication is key at this point. And so you're collecting and tracking and reporting on progress, as well as a process to learn and improve. You want to make sure that you are continuing to learn along the way. So in Elion, our vision is to be our client's most trusted advisor. And I think Jyoti has experienced this with us. We really are all about excelling at our craft of consulting. And so we want them to look at us and say, we really trust Elion, and we can't wait to have you back on a next project. We really strive to know their unique business and deliver insightful strategies and build great designs. And we're like the navigator in the car. We're the ones saying, turn left, turn right. But, we recognize that our client is driving, is at the steering wheel. And so we want to be inspirational. My last thought before you get to go to lunch, and I will take questions, is that we are all about inspiring folks to transform complexity, because a lot of the things we work on are highly complex, into enterprise success. That's the bottom line. We work with every type of enterprise, from a startup through to, a Fortune 1000 company that is looking to start a new line of business or launch a new operating group, or really differentiate themselves in their market because they're no longer competitive. And so we're looking to take those complex things and turn them into enterprise success. These are our values. I think it's important for you as an individual starting a company, or you working in a larger company, to make sure you have that values alignment, because then it feels great to work at that company. And if you're your own company and you're looking to attract others to come and work with you, it's important that you share that value system. So I won't go into those in detail. I think that women, have a tendency to, just because of how we're wired, to me, there are 4 keys that women are really suited for in running projects and in running companies and having leadership positions in companies. And I was thinking about this in preparation. For me, first is empathy. I find in general, I know there are men that have empathy, but I find in general that women are really strong in being empathetic. And that's important when you are working with customers or potential customers or other parts of the organization to understand what motivates them and, to have empathy for what it is that they need to accomplish and be able to partner with them on it. And that leads to the second one, which I believe is more cooperation. I think women in the business of running a household and raising children, which typically fall to women, we've had to learn it's a natural thing for us to cooperate. We have extended families that help us. We have friends that help us. And I'm not saying that men are not cooperative, but in general, I have seen in the places where I work and live that I love having, my team of friends and colleagues that I cooperate with in order to be successful, and we help each other to do that. I think women can be very visionary and creative. And then the last one I feel is I've seen us be very encouraging. I've also seen women be very competitive too. But I have in general seen women be, just very cooperative and encouraging, to each other. So, so that's what I had prepared. And I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Karen. Excellent, excellent. So, is there any question to Karen? Do you have any question to Karen? If it's not, let me know so that I can take over.
I don't know that I see questions for me. I think I see 2 open questions for your session, Jyoti.
No problem. I can handle that one. All right, Karen. Thank you so much. I know it's Saturday, so we really appreciate you took some time to come and educate on building strategy. And in terms of women entrepreneurials, what are the key skills are something that industry may expect from women. So thanks for sharing all of this. It's very valuable, helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to have further dialogue. I surely would love to connect.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'm going to take over. Yeah. Can you make me as a presenter?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there was a question, what do I code? That's a very interesting question. Okay. Let me tackle that. Then we'll go back. So we will have a lunch later. Let's just learn that we'll go to lunch later. Lunch is secondary, learning is first. So the question I was asked, what is that if we are saying that the machine is the one going to code, if we are saying that the machine is the one going to do everything, what am I going to code? That's a very interesting question. So let me show you. It's one of my live projects. Okay, I'm currently working on 2 projects. So it's one of my projects. So what they asked me to do, time series analysis. Okay, so it's daily revenue. Okay, how much revenue a company gets based on the product they sell. Okay, so this is the product they sell, correct? At a high level. Okay, keep in mind. So what you are looking at, let's take an example, Lexmark. It's a company who makes hardware, printer, etc. So for such company, how do I do daily revenue? It's a global company. They're not only operating in United States. So they operate almost all regions, North America, Latin America, Middle East, whatever company, whatever region you name, they operate everywhere. Okay. So this is a region they're operating. There is a region, there is a country, there is a state and a city. So they want to understand at each level, what is my daily revenue? If my revenue goes down as my plan, I want to do a rolling forecast for 6 days. Why? So that I can limit whom to pay, whom to not to pay. Okay, whom to pay, whom to not to pay. So this is the underlying problem. So bottom line, what it is, I want you to understand, because the question you asked me, it made me to think there is a lot of lack of clarity. Okay, if I am saying the machine is going to code, then what the heck I am doing, correct? So that makes me think the concept is not reached there yet. So the underlying problem, let's take an example company like Lexmark. The CFO wanted to understand on a daily revenue, correct? Why? I have accounts payable, accounts receivable. So receivable is fine, payable is my problem. So based on my daily revenue, I can limit my payables. I can tell the vendor, instead of paying in 45 days, I can pay in 60 days. All this happened due to COVID-19. So because the unpredictable controlled situation, okay? The situation is some cases controlled, situation is unpredictable, okay? So I want to have a better view on my accounts payable, whom to pay, whom to not pay, whom to delay. So for that, I have to have a daily revenue forecast. So based on today's actual, I'll forecast next 3 days. So that's the underlying problem. So the piece of code, what I'm going to show you, it's written for this. So we use both deep learning as well as the machine learning. Okay, we use both deep learning as well as the machine learning. You see this one, time series forecasting, select this. You see this one, I hope, can you all see my screen? Probably not. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we are able to.
No, 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 you are not actually, I'm in a different screen. Okay, let me stop and share. Okay, so I am in a different screen. This you can see now. All right. Yeah. So this is what I was talking about. Okay.
Okay.
So you can see the implementation of time series analysis. So like this is the time series forecasting, and this time series forecasting done by using deep learning as well as a machine learning. It doesn't matter what you do. I'm choosing machine learning. I'm going to source code. Under source code, this is a source code, and this is the code written. Okay. Whoever asked the question in the entire source code, correct? Not even a single line written on a business rules. And that is what the machine learns. Okay. So here, what I am doing for a machine to understand. Okay. So the first step is setting up my infrastructure. Ignore that.